This is a reading of the article British and Russian Imperialism 2 by James Connolly, published in the Workers' Republic newspaper on the 10th of September 1898, transcribed and marked up by Endo Callahan for the Marxist Internet Archive, where I'm currently reading it, and where you can read many texts by Connolly and many more Marxists than just him. Anyways, this particular text is part 2. I've already recorded part 1. They're both very short, so you may as well listen to or read part 1 before you read part 2. Anyways, that's enough of my introduction. On with the text. When the Russian disarmament proposals were first mooted, we, alone among Irish journalists, characterized them as dishonest and the chorus of praise they elicited throughout Europe as hypocritical. One short week has sufficed to prove the truth of our contention. There is scarcely a capital in Europe from which Great Britain has not been complimented on the successful outcome of the battle before Khartoum, complimented by the very men and newspapers who a week ago were ostentatiously singing anthems of brotherly love with all men and deploring the cruel necessity of war. The British occupation of Egypt, from the bombardment of Alexandria down to this latest massacre at Omdurman, has been one prolonged criminal enterprise conceived and executed entirely in the interests of the holders of Egyptian bonds and speculating capitalists. Begin quote, India is regarded by its alien rulers as a huge human cattle farm to be worked solely in the interest of the dominant nation. Whatever is done for its vast internal resources is done for the benefit of the Indian people, but primarily with a view to the dividends which the investing classes of England may draw from such development. End quote. That's from the Limerick Leader, July 1897. The enemy, as our Irish newspapers call them, fought for home and freedom. The British carried fire and sword and desolation into a land and upon a people who had never injured them, a people who could not have disturbed their conquest even of Lower Egypt had they been ever so willing. But Britain has triumphed. Glorious triumph. And that's the end of the text. It very much was related to part 1, which I think was actually published 1 week before this one. And this is the one dealing with British imperialism. The other one only really dealt with Russian imperialism. But the point James Connolly is making here makes sense. It's absolutely hypocritical to call for world peace while colonizing places and obviously using violence to colonize those places. Like he said in the other one, Russia, the rule of the Tsar is only possible through the sword, is what he said in part 1. And here we see the same thing. British rule is only possible through the sword, and all these same newspapers that were, celebrating the notion of world peace as put forward by the Tsar 1 week earlier were suddenly celebrating the British victory against the enemy whom they defeated in Khartoum. People who were only defending their home and freedom, as James Connolly points out in this article. So you've got violent colonialism that really is based on the exploitation and resource extraction. This is primarily with a view to the dividends of which the investing classes of England may draw, as Connolly quotes the Limerick Leader here. I've never heard of the Limerick Leader, but this is a pretty insightful quote he's giving here. I don't know if there's any resources online that show anything else written or published by the Limerick Leader, but could be interesting. And it's 1897, which is sort of like a very early compared to most of Connolly's texts. Maybe they're like a forerunner to him. Anyway, that's enough for this commentary. Have a good one, and do not forget ruthless criticism of all things.